Welcome, friends,
to the How-To Heretic.
I am Uncle Mark.
And I'm Uncle Dan.
I'm Uncle Doug. And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
That's right. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear. That's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles. And with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields,
We're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
after all, you only get one that we know of, so you'd better make the most of it.
Well, fellers.
Yo. Yes.
Welcome to another show.
Yeah.
That we're going to do.
Yeah.
We're just here to entertain the people.
We're snowbound, so
Yes.
there might be 12 shows this week. 12 shows, or one of us will be eaten. Yeah.
That's right. Well,
There'll be one less uncle every show.
so
Until it's just Fat Dan.
so in 3 weeks you'll know the winner.
Atheist Opinions with Fat Dan. Live.
It's already happening. It's
Live
already,
from the log cabin. So
I'm nibbling on Doug as we speak.
so we got a very informative show today. I am going to talk about a magic box.
You are, and one of the most famous of all the boxes. Really.
Yes, right. The most famous box of all. And then Dan, I'm not sure what you're talking about.
We're gonna go demonic. We're gonna get ourselves into a bit of a demon.
Can we do the whole show in that voice modulation of the demon voice?
We'll talk to Cody about that and see if that can happen.
And then we have a special guest on. Our friend Tony McAleer is going to talk about the races and the relative value of each one.
Nope. That's not at all what he's going to.
Oh, that's not what he's talking about.
No. But he is going to talk about how he used to believe.
Tony 20 years ago might have told us about this.
Might have told us about that, but he managed.
It's a good story. Yeah.
He managed to not believe that anymore.
Tony does not believe that anymore.
So we're going to chat with him about the journey that he went on. So that's lovely.
And once again,
we need to remind everybody that it is now officially December.
Yeah.
As it wasn't last week, and as such, we have begun our the clock is ticking for money that we are going to be giving to the Freedom from Religion Foundation.
The
FFRF.
Yes.
Which is a delightful organization, sort of there to help us keep church and state separate.
They are the watchers on the wall.
It's a pretty darned important moment in history to be supporting these guys.
These days, why not join the losing side? That's what I say.
Right? If you're going to go down, at least be on the record as having given to the right people. So again, a percentage, 20% of all of our Patreon take for the month of December will be going to them. We hope that you'll be willing to participate in that just by going to howtoheretic.com, and then you find the either the charity link or the patron link, just either one, and that'll take you to our Patreon page, and sign up at whatever level you want to, and you'll be participating in helping us and helping them.
Yep.
And let's do a show.
Two great causes. Let's roll.
Oh, Uncle Doug.
Uncle Dan.
You know, what I've had a hankering of late to have my face melted off. I don't need it anymore. I could use a new one.
Yeah, it's a new dermabrasion.
That's right. It's macro dermabrasion.
It's mega dermabrasion.
It's complete dermabrasion. And Uncle Mark, you're gonna tell us how we can do that, right?
You know, there's actually a long honored way to do this.
Okay, sure.
You know, a lot of you see those kids in the mall selling the Israeli sea salt facial thing from the Dead Sea.
Yeah, sure.
This is they'll be selling this next. So
this is phase 2.
You know, fellas, we've talked about a few pieces of holy technology on the show before.
Sure.
We talked about the e-meter, which allows an auditor to discover how many ancient galactic space ghosts are stuck to you for a small fee.
Of which we have one currently in the room with us.
We're looking at it right now. Yes, thank you, listener Tucker.
Yeah.
And then we talked about the Ouija board, of course, in case you want to contact a departed spirit via Scrabble.
Right.
And of course the Necronomicon, that is just as useful as the first two things.
Right.
But today I want to talk about the OG,
the Mac Daddy,
the big baddie, the biblical mother of all holy technology, and what our millions of Hebrew-speaking listeners know as the Aran Habret.
Yeah.
That's right.
Nailed it.
The Ark of the motherfucking Covenant.
Bam, baby.
which most people don't know is also known as the Ark of Testimony.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I prefer that. Let's go with that.
I don't prefer that.
No,
So,
it's terrible.
anyway, we all know that advancements in technology can very often give one army the edge over another.
Sure.
And one army we know from history needed all the help they could get, madly genociding the people God hated, but whom he had also created. So, fuck, it's a rabbit hole. This is not a segment about the moral catastrophe of every page of the Bible, but rather one piece of cool Bible weaponry that kicks ass.
Yeah.
And, of course, the army in question was the Israelites. So before Hitler dispatched a team to find the Ark, spoiler, it seems he really did. And that caper was disrupted by a dashing archaeologist / cultural thief, only to get locked up in the mother of all warehouses as the credits rolled.
Yeah.
This little cooler-sized thingy, what was carried around on poles, packed a real punch for the Jews when they needed it. So think of it as an airstrike in a box, which is pretty neat.
Yeah.
And before we get to what this Bronze Age C-130 gunship could do, let's talk about what it was and what powered that punch. So, what does it look like? Well, according to the Book of Exodus, the version when the book. Listen, and if anything that's in the Book of Exodus is fact,
Is true.
science fact.
Just ask the Egyptians.
100% true.
Yes, and I can prove it. Oh wait, where'd the proof go? Anyway,
It's in the Bible, doy.
according to the Book of Exodus, the version we're all familiar with from Raiders of the Lost Ark is not really too far off.
Right.
With the caveat that the movie props gold work was probably a tad more sleek than the Israelites were pulling off at the time. So, in a great example of how the Bible goes from absurdly vague on matters that are great to pointlessly specific on random details, the box of the Ark itself was 2.5 cubits long.
I was about to ask how many cubits.
Yeah.
Well, luckily I can answer that question.
Can you translate it to furlongs for me?
Yeah, give me a second. Carry the
How about
hectare
light years?
by 1.5 wide by 1.5 high. Now, why the creator of the universe couldn't round up to the next whole cubit is just one of those abiding mysteries for scholars, I suppose.
It's
but
about the size of one of these Tupperware bins that I've got over here.
it's not. It's about the size of a child's coffin. Just for
great.
yeah,
That's
You
perfect.
could have just said that.
yeah. So, what is it made of? It's made of acacia wood, and people are like, "Well, the acacia is the tree of life," and it's like, no, dude, that's what wood there was.
It's wood.
There wasn't a lot of wood.
It's made of wood.
It's acacia wood.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of wood in the Sinai.
Yeah,
Right.
Noah used up all the wood for the ark.
Yeah.
So
Took them that long to just grow more trees.
it was acacia wood. It was covered with gold because God is a tacky bitch and loves gold. It had hoops for the long poles to be stuck through so people could carry it without touching it because, as we'll explore, it was a very hot potato.
Yeah.
And it had a heavy lid of solid gold. Now, remember the two angel things on the lid from Raiders, kneeling and kind of spreading their wings towards each other?
Yeah.
First of all, quick aside, is it odd to you guys that a special box made to hold the Ten Commandments is very much in violation of the second one about graven images?
Shh.
Sure.
The answer is shh.
Like, were there literally no copy editors in Judea? So, anyway, that aside,
If it look, all of the rules are firmly in place unless God says otherwise.
unless Moses is like, it'd be nice as angels.
You know, it'd be cool.
You know what I'd love to find out is if it turns out the tablets that the Ten Commandments were chiseled on were too big for the box. Because nobody bothered to check. Went to put them in. It's like clunk.
Well,
Clank.
Get them in an angle. If you put them in an angle,
if we can trust the Charlton Heston movie at all, which I sure can be trusted, those things would not fit in that little child's coffin over
Right,
there.
exactly.
No.
In Dan's collection of child coffins he has in the room.
Right.
So, anyway, I just thought those angels were a design choice. Those little tree toppers were a design choice for the movie, but that's actually super specified in Exodus, and it's called the mercy seat.
Can I just tell you what I'm getting hung up on right now?
Tell me.
You know the rings that the poles go through?
Yeah.
How strong must those rings have been to carry a wooden box that has 2 stone tablets inside and a solid gold, heavier than lead top?
Yeah. And the rings were specified to be made out of gold, which is not what I would call a weight-bearing material.
No.
Right.
Okay, sorry, just got hung up on the physics of the thing.
I'm sure everything's fine. So this thing on the lid itself with these two angels pointing at each other is called the mercy seat.
Okay. I've heard that term before.
I've heard the term before. I mean,
I've heard both of those words before.
It's in a Nick Cave song, and I thought it was like an electric chair or something, right? But apparently it's.
Well, I thought it was like where God sat in judgment of people.
Well, this actually is where God appeared to Moses on the mercy seat. So if you consider the dimensions,
wait, who's sitting? Wait.
Yes, you're right.
Okay, fuck.
So here's a box that's a yay long by yay wide at the top.
Yeah.
And then you got these two angels on it that are smaller than the lid with their wings pointing towards each other.
And kind of pointy.
So I'm just guessing, I kind of sketched it out, that this little space between the wings was maybe 32 by 18 inches.
It's for a slimmer lad.
It's for a narrow Yahweh.
Yeah.
But so I thought the same thing. But God apparently appeared there as a little ball of light or a cloud of vapor, a power he shares with Dracula.
Yeah, sure.
So, same universe? Probably so. So, it's a fancy little gold jewelry box on poles. Because as I mentioned, nobody can touch it. More on that in a jiffy. Why does God need a fancy footlocker with a tiny place to stand on top? What does he need to keep in there, you ask? Well, not a hell of a lot. We've talked many times on the show about the 10 Commandments. What a grand revelation it was for the time in all of human history, the first time in all of human history, that people were told by an on-fire hedge not to kill other people, not to take other people's shit,
right,
not to even want to take other people's shit, and then a lot of useless petty garbage about what day to go to church and what statues are cool to make. Again, ironically, to this story, spoiler alert, no statues are okay to make.
Right.
Those 10 Commandments, yes, those tablets, as we've already discussed, were in the box, along with a pot of manna.
Oh, sure.
Now, the manna, if you guys remember, was the magic food that God gave the Israelites.
It's ground bread.
As at least, according to the story, 600,000 of them wandered for 40 years in a small desert with no provisions. So in the ark is just a little light snack.
Sure.
At best.
A nibble.
And of course, also, Aaron's rod was in there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Remember? Aaron Ra was in there?
Aaron Ra was in there. That would be awesome if you open it up and he just, hello.
Hey, everybody.
That is the most ridiculous thing anyone's ever said. So
wait a second. Aaron's rod.
Yeah. So let me explain Aaron's rod.
That's the stick that turned into a snake.
What was the stick, like
It's
18 inches long? Was it a wand?
They broke it.
Point of order, as I'll show, is one of many sticks that turned into a snake. But
well, that's true.
So Aaron was the younger brother of Moses.
Right.
Kind of a less important to the story. Not a lot of name recognition.
Here comes a Doug joke.
Kind of like Doug. So anyway.
Oh, Doug knows his place. That's cute.
Moses had a fancy staff that God turned into a snake. But then the Pharaoh's guys made all their rods snakes.
Yeah.
So Aaron's rod turned into a snake and
you
ate
wanna see
all
me-
the other snakes.
You guys want to see me turn my rod into a snake?
Cody, cut that out.
Not again.
So later, there was an uprising, and God plagued a bunch of his naughty chosen. And Moses and Aaron got him to stop, but not until all 12 tribes had stuck a stick in the ground.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah.
So
you gotta stick your sticks.
So there's 12 sticks stuck in the ground. Aaron's magically blossoms with leaves and almonds, thus showing obviously that the tribe of Levi was the most righteous and therefore to be the priestly class. Just science, guys.
How does that not show that they're all nuts?
So that's Aaron's rod. So that's it. That's all that there is in the ark.
Right. So Aaron's rod, as Doug points out, is apparently only small enough to fit in this little box, even though it's blossomed with almonds.
Obviously, whoever wrote about the ark had no sense of proportion.
Have you? By the way, have
God-
you ever tried an almond butter and manna sandwich? Because honestly, that is a treat.
It's a little emergency ark snack.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you could fit like a 6-foot rod into a 3.5-foot box and that the creator of the universe could stand on this weird little balance beam jigger on top.
The guy who designed the staff designed the Stonehenge from Spinal Tap.
Well, I mean, we're assuming it's a nice big walking
Aaron
stick.
had a little pixie stick.
Yeah, maybe it's
Back
a little,
off, Pharaoh.
Not all snakes are big.
True.
He could have turned it into a nice, a cute little garter snake or
It
whatever.
could have coiled up like a snake and then turned back into a stick.
Oh yeah, yeah. Ta-da!
There you go.
Problem solved.
We're forgetting how much of this is magic.
If religion would just hire us to fix the Bible, we'd have it done lickety
You
split.
hear that, religion?
We're better than
Wonderbible.com.
all of those rabbis that pour over the things. And
I think it's .ru. So with this golden trunk of random old stuff, the Israelites set off to genocide whomever God told them that he hated.
right.
So the Levite priests carrying the thing would walk about half a mile ahead of the Israelite army. Despite the great expense of the gold and all the craft work of it, it was always concealed under loads of furs and cloth
Like you do.
because nobody could really look at it.
Right.
So I guess it just looked like a bunch of guys coming back from the hunt. Or
Sure.
I
Or
think,
on their way to do laundry.
yeah, I think part of the point was people were supposed to be intimidated by its approach. But if it just looks like some dude's gonna dump a dead donkey in the ravine, I don't fucking know. So, all right, let's get
Yeah,
down
I
to
do
business.
like that. Like, let's craft it out of the finest gold with beautiful ornamentation and cover that shit up though.
Yeah, it just looks like guys carrying a load of laundry.
Oh, yeah. Or he's bragging about how beautiful it is, and everyone's like, can we see it?
No.
No.
What are you,
Why do
crazy?
you want to see it?
Stop it.
So let's get down to business.
Yeah.
What was this trunk of junk full of junk capable of doing? Its first awesome miracle was making the Jordan River dry up.
Yeah.
Not a trick most people who live in the desert are prone to appreciate. But as Joshua was leading his people to the promised land, they had to cross the Jordan River. And so it parted the waters, and they crossed with dry sandals. Now,
A very good trick.
as we discussed in episode 38, the ark made an appearance at the Battle of Jericho.
Yeah.
The Israelites carried it around the walled city one time each day over 7 days. 7 priests blew 7 ram's horns. And by the way, if you've never heard the angelic delicacy of 7 shofars bleeding at once, mwah, beautiful.
I don't even remember this, but I sent you a YouTube link to 12 straight hours of shofar playing. It's out there.
That's my white noise at night. That's how I sleep. So they carried it around, blew the horns, boom, the walls of Jericho come tumbling down, revealing our old friend Rob, the prostitute, among others.
Right.
So what's the next installment of this weird Old Testament Antiques Roadshow? Well, the story takes a rather bad turn for our friends.
Oh no.
Friends? Our heroes. Heroes? Our murdering plunder army, the Israelites.
Yes.
So they haul the ark out to slay some dirty Philistines at the Battle of Ebenezer, and they lose.
Oh.
So the Philistines captured the ark. And then a Jewish messenger, runs all the way back to wherever and delivers the news and told the old priest Eli that the ark had been captured, causing him to die on the spot.
Causing Eli to die on the spot.
Eli just fell over dead. So Eli's unnamed daughter-in-law instantly gave sadness birth to a child that she somehow had the presence of mind to name Ichabod, meaning the glory has deserted Israel before she herself died of sad,
Oh, my God.
leaving behind an orphaned boy with a terrible name because they lost a magic hope chest.
So what you're saying is that weapon that it is, sometimes you take friendly fire.
Sometimes you gotta calibrate properly. And then look, the Bible is nothing if not a catalog of the Mediterranean basin's biggest drama queens. So
Well, and listeners to this show, any fans of Gamcast out there, make sure to never tell Eli Bosnick that the ark has been taken.
Yeah.
but not to worry, little Ichabod. This trophy of war was to be an unlucky one for the Philistines to have seized. They took it to lovely Ashdod, the beautiful town of Ashdod,
Yeah.
where they placed it in the temple of Dagon. Now, Dan,
Yes.
remember when we watched that garbage fire of a movie, Samson,
Yeah.
for the God-awful movies episode we did of the same name?
Yes.
The temple that Bible Hulk destroyed at the end of that movie with the big lizard man statue that fell and killed the priest?
Sure.
That's the Temple of Dagon.
Right. Oh,
Anyway.
Day gone by.
You see how it all, like any great narrative, everything intertwines.
It
know what I mean?
all works together.
So, anyway, when the Philistines parked the ark there, The next morning, the giant lizard statue of Dagon was tipped over and lying as if in worship of the ark. No worries. They stood old Dagon back up, spackled their mighty god's ankles, and it was all good.
Sure.
And then the next morning, he had fallen down again.
Oh!
And this time his head had snapped off.
Oh, God. Don't lose your head over it.
All of this is great foreshadowing.
Oh, my God.
This temple was obviously not meant to stand. So, in addition, because every Bible story you got to gild the lily, the good people of the greater metropolitan Ashdod area were stricken with tumors, and what can only be described as a blizzard of mice overtook their city. and it gets weirder. So after 7 months of this shit, the Philistines sheepishly gave this fucking thing back. And to apologize for stealing the Israelites' superweapon, they fashioned, and this is Bible true, they fashioned charming trinkets of gold as tokens of friendship. What were these trinkets, Dan?
Mice?
They were delightful little baubles of tumors and the plague of mice.
Oh, my God.
Who said the people in the Old Testament didn't know how to have a little mid-genocidal fun?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
What does a tumor-shaped trinket look well? I know it looks like a tumor.
just
Those were the failed mice. So they were like, well, what's this thing? It's a tumor.
So that's not the whole return of the ark story either. So when the Philistines set the ark in the middle of a field to give it back, some nearby men called the somethings decided to have a peek at the yard sale of Gak inside. And this is probably where our friend Steven Spielberg got the idea for the end of Raiders. And according to one translation, 50,070 of them were killed
Wow.
for looking into the ark.
Wow.
That's a number.
So 50,000. So it's all fun and games, kids, until the entire student body of a good-sized state university is killed for asking what's in the box.
Right.
So after
What's
that,
in the box?
after that, the ark kicked around for a while, crashing on friends' couches, not really being seen in public too much until mighty King David, Christianity's most revered but certainly not only revered rapist, wanted it moved to Jerusalem.
Sure. Why not?
When it was in the wagon on its way, it almost tipped over. So the very responsible driver, a guy named Uzzah, reached over to keep it from falling, and the loving God killed him dead for the unforgivable crime of touching it.
Yeah.
Well, duh.
Obviously.
So it arrived in Jerusalem.
If the Lord wants his box tipped, you let the box fall.
So this is my favorite part of the story because it is so fucking weird. So it arrived in Jerusalem, and in a very strange twist of the story, King David himself got done up in a provocative, sexy outfit
Nice.
and danced with such sensual abandon in front of the ark and all the good people of Jerusalem that his first wife, Michal, not Bathsheba, the one whose husband he murdered and then raped her as a wedding proposal, rebuked him for overdoing it. And they got into a huge fight, and he said he was going to fuck all the girls that saw him do the sexy dance and never fuck Michal again. And so she never bore a child
Right.
because he was
Magic Miking
Although
all over the Ark
he
of the
left it
Covenant.
all out there, man, on the floor.
Although, point of order, I think that we all know that King David's first wife was Jonathan, but I'm just going to
So true. So true.
leave that where it is.
So, yeah. And again, never forget, David is one of the biggest good guys in the Bible.
Right.
So, blah, blah, blah. David puts the ark in a special
I
tent.
love this dancing thing, though.
I want to dwell on that a little bit more.
because
I had to read the paragraph like 3 times. I'm like, wait, what happened?
I really
just thrusting
Look,
at the
I've always wanted to make movie recreations of Bible stories that
Yeah.
are actually true to the Bible.
Right.
Now suddenly this has risen to the top of the list. I want to see him. So
Can we get
see,
Channing Tatum?
I want to see. Yes.
Well, and it
Yes.
also, the fact that this motherfucker can dance ties back to the Jonathan thing. You know,
Yeah.
he's,
Obviously,
he's a fabulous gay murdering rapist king.
he's been to the clubs.
Yeah.
he knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You got to do the beat with the shofar.
David puts the ark in a tent called the tabernacle that's got an inner flap that only the high priest can go in. I know flaps can go into once a year. Others try to worship it and burst into flame.
Let me tell you something. Just as a side note, The number of times that I have seen Christians obsessively recreate the tabernacle tent with like the exact dimensions and the other things and get super proud about it, it's ridiculous.
You know why? It's
without a sexy dance before that.
Right.
Because, like you said, it's so pointless. But in Exodus, it's laid out like measured. It's this tall. The
It's
rings
one
are
of the
this
things that
big.
they know.
You can actually do it.
You can actually do it.
There's so many images of this tent, of recreation, literal recreations of this tent. Online. So, it's got a fancy flap. But other people tried to worship there and burst into flame because our God is an awesome God. So, time passes, and now Solomon is king. He decides to build a super fancy temple of legend, one equipped with a little room for the Ark. It seems like it stayed there for a while. All is well. Then in 587 BCE, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon destroys Jerusalem. In addition to this is a very gay story suddenly. In addition to kidnapping Daniel
Suddenly?
and a bunch of unblemished young Jewish boys that is for some reason never fully explained. Legend has it Nebuchadnezzar takes the Ark to Babylon, and then it gets really silly. The Maccabees.
then it gets really silly.
The Maccabees, who I guess are the only Scottish clan named in the Bible, claim that prophet Jeremiah spirited it away before the Babylonian invasion and hid it in a cave in Mount Nebo. The Orthodox Ethiopian Church claims it found its way down the Nile to them.
Right, of course they do.
And they keep it guarded in a modest little church to this day. In 2009, Abun Paulos, the patriarch of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, said he would reveal the Ark to the world the following day. Big news, right?
Yeah, that's huge.
And then that following day he appeared and said he would not be unveiling the Ark,
He died of sadness.
but rather said it was doing just fine.
Considering what happens when the Ark is revealed, I think it's a good thing.
Right,
Harrison
exactly.
Ford was riding his horse through towns going, "Keep your eyes shut, Marion."
And most obviously, the Lembe people of South Africa say they brought it somehow all the way to their ancestral mountains and hid it there. Then, of course, there's the claims that the Knights Templar hid it in Chartres Cathedral, that it was hidden in a small village in southern France, then secretly brought to the U.S. at the outbreak of World War I. Also that it's in England, in Ireland, in Egypt, blah, 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 blah. And it appears that, yes, among many valuable and occult objects Adolf Hitler tried to locate, the Ark was among them. However, no German claims have been made to ever having found it. But
That they tell you about.
exactly. But here's the craziest theory about the fate of the legendary Ark. The Catholic takeaway about the whereabouts of the Ark is, of course, the silliest, as is their custom. Somehow they take Revelations 12:1, which Uncle Doug inflicted on us just a couple of shows back. The part where the woman stands on the moon and is clothed in the sun,
Sure.
and with a crown of stars, they take it to mean the Virgin Mary, has somehow, by some math, become the Ark of the New Covenant.
Oh, shut up.
And that the junk collection that was in the old wooden box is what Jesus is inside Mary.
Shut up.
And that's why she gave birth to a magic walking stick and a tin of flour.
You don't get to take something that was literal and be like, yes, a lot of the Bible you have to take as a parable or as a metaphor, because it doesn't make any sense any other way. You can't take the one thing that's described as actual physical reality and then say, haha, it was a metaphor the whole time.
It's look,
You don't carry a metaphor around a temple 7 times.
in the Bible. It is clearly a box of shit.
Yeah.
A wooden box of shit with 2 tree toppers on it. And so suddenly now it's a woman, right? That's dressed in the sun where a baby shoots out of. So I guess the Ark was inside of us all along, fellas. So
You know what just occurred to me too is
click your heels together 3 times and say, there's no Ark like home.
Right. The Liahona is totally Joseph Smith's attempt at putting an Ark in the Book of Mormon story,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
It's a little gold thing that helped and hurt.
yeah,
And then he couldn't figure out what to do with it, and it just kind of went away.
right. That they. We'll talk about the Liahona in depth another time, but it was their compass.
Yeah.
And then as soon as they found it, they got lost for years.
Yeah. It was a compass, and it was an instant messaging system. That's another story.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the Ark, people.
Wow.
Plug it in and don't overcharge, I guess. And actually, there literally is a Christian apologetic about how this thing could be so deadly. And there's this these diagrams online that it was some kind of actual fucking battery
Right. Yeah. well, you
no
put one lead into the manna and then another lead
into the almonds.
Into the almonds.
Yeah.
And you create power.
Boom. So that's the Ark.
Suddenly, mice start flying around. Anyway, thanks a lot, Mark. Moving on.
Well, Uncle Doug,
Yo.
from time to time, we like to know who's worshiping what, who's worshiping who.
It's important.
It's important, and we have a graveyard and we have a garden that we like to divide these things into. We hope the garden gets smaller and the graveyard gets bigger.
Agreed.
But I think we've got a little subset of the garden today.
Sort of, yeah. One doesn't know what qualifies as a god and what doesn't. But
There's a lot of in-betweeners.
today we're gonna dip into the demonic.
This is Garden of the Gods Demon Talk.
Demon talk,
Yeah.
and this week's dip into the demonic comes to me via one of my favorite sources of unexpected randomness, beloved animated series Archer, which I was watching the other day. As Archer fans all know, the character Sterling Archer is both a willfully ignorant ding-dong and a semi-constant flowing font of insanely obscure but oddly topical trivia.
Okay.
In one such moment, he refers to a colleague, I don't remember which one, as Asmodeus, destroyer of men, which is, I was like, what the hell is that? That sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
And I strayed down, I decided to go down that rabbit hole.
Okay.
And what a rabbit hole it was, too, because not only did I learn about the guy who is variously known as the King of Demons, or Prince of Demons, or the Devil on Two Sticks, but I also learned a bunch about all sorts of other stuff that I did not see coming.
Okay.
But we'll get to that.
Will you explain the devil on two sticks part?
Please.
I will not, because
Okay,
I
good.
have no idea why. I think I do know why that.
He's the demon lord of street food.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's also known as Sir Kebab. So let me introduce you to Asmodeus, which I always want to call Asmodeus because
Right.
when I read it, that's what it looks like. But I checked several sources and they all said Asmodeus, which
Okay.
I find sorely disappointing.
I like Asmodeus too, but whatever.
Fine, it doesn't matter. Anyway, among many other legends, he's a demon, an angel, and my personal favorite, one of the 7 princes of hell, each of whom focuses on one of the 7 deadly sins.
Huh.
His primary focus? Lust.
Ah.
This guy's got titles up the wazoo.
Yeah,
doesn't
he does. And who wouldn't be lustful when they gaze on a man such as he? This dashing fellow has 3 heads.
Oh, God.
One like a sheep, one like a bull, and one like a man. The man's head has pointy ears, a big nose, pointy teeth, and he breathes fire. So
He's got it all.
sexy, baby.
He's got it all.
From the neck to the chest, he's just sort of an average Joe. And then things get a little funky again. Brightly colored feathers adorn his rooster legs. So maybe that's the 2 sticks. I'm not sure. And if you're really lucky, he'll show you his serpent's tail. Or maybe he's just a good-looking guy with a limp. It depends on who you ask.
Okay.
So where does he come from?
Where does he come from?
You might ask. Thank you
Yeah.
for asking that. Yes, well, one of the original references is in the Bible, but maybe not your Bible. And now we're going to go down one of these rabbit holes that I was not prepared for.
All right.
Here's the thing. I've been creating and listening to religion-themed podcasts for 7 years now. I did a blog for a couple years before that. And before that, I took world religion classes in college. And before that, I went to church for almost 20 years. And in all that time, looking at religions from all over the world, I somehow never encountered the fact that Catholic and Orthodox Christians use a different Bible than Protestants use.
Dear God.
How did I not know this?
How did you not know that?
How did you not know this?
I just assumed that everybody, look, it's the Bible.
Right.
How is it not the same Bible? Did you guys knew this?
Yeah.
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 That the Catholic and Orthodox Bible is like to the point of having like extra books?
See, there is a reason I did know that, actually, because when we covered Revelations a few weeks ago, at the end of Revelations, it says, no one shall add or take away from this book.
Right.
Which puts the Mormons in a really weird place.
Right.
So a Mormon apologetic for why that doesn't matter is the fact that other churches use various different versions of the Bible. So I remember getting that in seminary. I don't think it's explanatory or useful or smart, but I remember it.
Okay.
I knew it. I swear I learned it for some reason in an art history class in college, but I didn't know the depth of the differences. I just knew
they were different.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, I knew that there were different translations of the Bible. I did not know that there are actual, like the Catholics and Orthodox Christians have 7 books in their Old Testament that are completely excluded from the Protestant ones. Even though these books are all heavily referenced in the New Testament.
No shit.
So these are known as the Deuterocanonical books. They are Tobit, Judith, Wisdom, a.k.a. the Wisdom of Solomon, Baruch, 1st Maccabees, 2nd Maccabees, and then there's some additions to the books of Esther and Daniel. I did not know any of this. I was shocked. And these books are all part of the Bible. They were part of all of the Bibles until the 16th century, when the Protestants decided to go with the rulings of a bunch of Jewish rabbis, and voila, different Bibles that I didn't know about. Anyway, back to Archer's friend Asmodeus. So, Jews and Christians who are not Protestants first learn about Asmodeus in the book of Tobit, a.k.a. Tobias, depending on who you ask.
Right.
Where he is a nasty little sumbitch and the principal bad guy. In that story, he seems to have fallen in love with young Sarah, daughter of Raguel, and kin to Tobias. Sarah had bad luck with men. 7 times she had been engaged to a fella, only to have had him killed on their wedding night before they could consummate.
7 times.
7 times. It does seem like after the 3rd or 4th, guys might start asking some questions.
Wow.
So finally, okay, we get it, King of Demons. You don't want her screwing other guys. Just tell her you love her. Enough with the passive aggression already. Enter our hero, and again, her nearest kinsman, Tobias. Toby decides that he's going to marry Sarah. And with the help of his sidekick, Archangel Raphael, who's disguised as a person, they hatch a foolproof plan. And so now I will give you a reading from Tobit, chapter 6, verses 17 and 18. Raphael said to him, "When you enter the bridal chamber, take some of the fish's liver and heart and put them on the embers of the incense. An odor will be given off." Gosh, you think?
Jesus, what?
"The demon will smell it and flee and will never be seen near her anymore. And also your wife will be super into it." I don't know. That seems a little squirrely. "Now, when you are about to go to bed with her, both of you must stand up and pray, imploring the Lord of heaven that mercy and safety may be granted to you. Do not be afraid, for she was set apart for you before the world was made. You will save her, and she will go with you. I presume," and this part I love, "I presume that you will have children with her, and they will be as brothers to you. Now say no more." So I guess when you have kids with your cousin, they're your brothers. I'm not really sure how all of that works.
Yeah. I'm still a little bit hung up on the burning liver thing.
Dwelling on the liver thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's a great way to get pretty much anybody to leave your bedchamber.
I like that, like as a Cialis commercial thing, like the 2 people sitting in the tub, and there's just a crow's ear of black smoke burning fish guts between them.
And
for when the mood strikes,
If you want to get your cousin in the mood.
burning organ.
considering that according to the Bible, this was both of their first times, I think some interesting kinks might have developed.
Yeah, for sure.
From this little experiment.
Well, what if you're in the mood, but you can't find a fish?
Right. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. Keep me in fish, goddammit. I need to have fish.
So that's got to be one of the BYU sex, not sex things.
If you're feeling amorous, put a fish liver over the incense.
Burn a fish liver and stand up and pray together.
In the dorm room.
Sexy.
You know what? I'll bet that would work.
About 50% of BYU guys could come just from that, for sure. Listen, so after all that, of course, they all lived happily ever after. So that's the biblical story of.
So it worked. I'm sorry, it worked. The fish liver actually.
That's right.
Was successful.
That's right. So congratulations.
All right, word to the wise
newlyweds.
listeners.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. If you need to exercise that kind of demon,
A three-headed chicken stick,
stinky sex is the way to go.
fish lip, goat butt, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Send your fish livers to How to Heretic. P.O. Box.
No, do not.
Please do not. There you go. So that's the biblical story of Asmodeus, except that there are other references that may be related, depending on which grumpy scholar you ask. The name of Asmodeus may come from the Hebrew root, meaning to destroy, thus corresponding him to the demon called Abaddon, who Uncle Doug might recognize depending on which version of the Bible he used, and whether or not he has since completely blocked it out, as the angel of the abyss and king destroyer in Revelation. The name may alternately have come from the Avestan language, as like Asma Deva, Asma meaning wrath, and Deva meaning demon or divine being, linking Asmodeus with the Zoroastrian demon of wrath.
How about that?
So, I mean, weird, right? Because we've never encountered something from the Bible actually being predated by an equally same.
No, this is a first. This is a first
from other religions in the region.
Again, I think if religion would just call us,
Right.
we can sort a lot of this out for him.
But of course, all of the many scholars, rabbis, whatever, have all said, no. It's not the same word, and the things don't come from the same things.
Sure, dude.
And whatever. He's also found in the Jewish text of the Haggadah.
Yeah.
Haagen-Dazs. I'm not sure what like when you go down some of these roads, you find texts that you've never heard of, and
Right.
so
Whole new Bibles.
yeah, literally. And he also is in the Testament of Solomon, sometimes under alternate names, including Asmodai, Asmodee, Ashmedai.
Asmodeus.
Right.
Asmodee.
Osmodeus. Osmodai. Yeah. Here's
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's nothing but fun
I hope
here.
that's not copyrighted.
It's not. I refuse to believe it.
I think German demon drinking songs are public domain now.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll give us a passage from the Testament of Solomon. I am called Asmodeus among mortals, and my business is to plot against the newly wedded so that they may not know one another. And I sever them from utterly by many calamities. I waste away the beauty of virgins and estrange their hearts. I transport men into fits of madness and desire when they have wives of their own, so that they leave them and go off by night and day to others that belong to other men, with the result that they commit sin and fall into murderous deeds.
Well, it's a shame that his kryptonite is burning fish liver.
Right?
And I like that he calls it his business.
That's my business.
My business,
Look,
bitch.
I make it my business.
Well, he's kind of a kindred demon to Lilith. Remember, her witchcraft was miscarriages,
Yeah.
right, and barrenness. So they're kind of working the same corner.
Yep.
I wonder if they know each other.
Yeah, I'm sure that they're friends. They've got they're colleagues.
And each of them have a bird-based body part, so
True.
maybe there's a little chemistry there. I don't know.
It seems like a natural thing.
I think so.
He has appeared in various texts. The Malleus Malicarum. Nailed it.
Yeah, is that like a witchcraft thingy?
Yeah, I guess so.
I've heard of that.
It's but that dates back to 1486, where he is depicted as a demon of lust. In the Dictionnaire Infernal, he's depicted with the breast of a man, a cock leg, serpent tail. This is where we get the 3 heads and all that sort of stuff. Riding a lion with a dragon wings and neck.
All right, knock it off. Like, seriously. Here's what's funny about some of this shit, too. The people who concocted this shit, they thought it was scary.
Right.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's so absurd to imagine the morphology and the physical movement of this absurd creature is just, stop it.
Only Jim Henson could actually bring these things to life.
And it would still be absurd.
Yeah.
Right. There's all of these things, even in later depictions in stuff. I have seen Asmodeus apparently he appears in Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh my God.
He's everywhere.
He's got to be in an H.P. Lovecraft story.
He's the
right?
Demigorgon.
He is, yeah. I didn't see him come up in Lovecraft anywhere, but
He should be.
it's so we don't know a lot about him, but I think that's enough to have a little bit of fun.
And he does not appear in the King James
Nope.
Bible, in Protestant Bibles.
Unless you think that he's also referenced by these other names
in Revelation and
Revelation and a few other places where they refer to a thing, and some scholars say that that's the same guy, some say not. So, but yeah, so that's why we never caught him in our readings of the Bible, because we were all very careful readers of the Bible.
Yes,
throughout
and annotators.
Yes, indeed. But yes, he wouldn't have been in our Bible because we have a lesser Bible.
Well, but it goes back to what is the editorial position of the How To Heretic, is that there are no original ideas, and everybody stole something from somebody else.
And I got to push back on it being a lesser Bible. Any Bible that's shorter, to me, is a greater Bible.
Well, yeah, I mean, lesser maybe in words, though.
That's
so
true.
that's probably nice. But you're absolutely right. Anything that can give us less Bible
It's a good thing.
is a good Bible.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us for Demon Talk.
Yeah. With that, we'll move along.
Moving on. Gentlefolk.
Hello.
Hello. As you know, your uncles are snowbound. Things are not looking good.
No, we're stuck in this. Not only in this building, but in this room. I don't feel safe.
Can you
going out.
dispatch, whoever you are out there, listeners, can you dispatch Saint Bernard's
Yes.
With the brandy
yes,
necklace.
not the Saint Bernard who we've discussed on the show. He's
Yeah.
useless.
Yeah, is he the guy that lost his head?
I don't losing track.
Be more
of how many-
specific.
Yeah,
Be
I
more
know.
spe-
Who the fuck knows at this point?
We want big dogs and brandy.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about here is patrons, the people that send us big dogs with brandy in the form of online donation.
In the form of money. And just a reminder, we mentioned it up front at the top of the show, but a percentage of all of the money that is given by these kind folk for this month of December is going to the Freedom from Religion Foundation. So they're doing double duty. They are giving in all the right ways.
Current and new patrons will be helping the cause.
That's right. So this week's best people in the world are Stephanie, Sebastian, Rubber and Heels, and Doug.
Yee.
It's on you to give a patron saint
Oh, Lord.
to the heretical popes. I didn't even know we had popes in heresy, but apparently we've got multiple popes.
God.
Nature hates a vacuum.
Right, indeed. So,
well,
saint
all right.
a pope.
Heretical popes, I'm going to present to you Saint Ignatius of Magna. And it's a topical saint because he is the patron saint of radial tires and all-wheel drive.
Yeah.
And also of soiled underwear. Uncle Doug on the way here today nearly bought the farm on the freeway.
Uncle Doug nearly met a saint today.
I prayed to Saint Ignatius
Saint
of Magna
Peter.
and got a free pair of underwear out of it.
There you go, heretical popes. I mean, such a good saint for the season.
Yeah.
Unless I haven't looked up where the heretical popes are. If you're in Australia, you'll have to save it for half a year.
No, they're friends of the show. They're
okay.
they're a local family of popes.
They know what we're going through today.
They do.
Okay. well, good luck to you all, popes, and to all the rest of you who may or may not be giving. Now's a great time to consider joining these best people in the world and giving money both to us and then subsequently to the FUFRF.
This is the perfect time to decide you hate your real uncles and you love your three fake ones and give us the money you'd give your uncles. I don't think that's an unreasonable request.
Right. Or, do what, remember that you're not giving, as we learned last week, to the Salvation Army. So kick into our bucket.
That's right.
That's right.
Ding,
We're going to
ding.
put Doug out front here with a kettle and a bell.
Ding, 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 ding.
All right.
Moving on. Hey, Uncle Doug.
Uncle Dan.
We have lessons to learn in this world.
Indeed.
And sometimes we, as the three uncles, can't teach ourselves all of the lessons all by ourselves.
We don't know all of the things.
It's weird.
Despite that we are probably the most enlightened beings that the world has ever known.
Well, we're all very stable geniuses, and that's nice to have.
Right.
But sometimes we can learn something from somebody else. And Uncle Mark, you've found somebody to teach us some valuable lessons.
I certainly have. And, we've talked about many things that the religious life encodes us with as we pass through it. And then we're just kind of stuck with when we leave.
Yeah, they just sort of stick with you unless you do something about it.
Unless you pack that baggage while you're in it and you're unpacking it for the rest of your life.
Then you carry that baggage to the grave.
Yeah.
So one of the goals of our show is to help people lighten their load of baggage. And we've talked about things like the homophobia you live with coming out of religion, the sexism, et cetera, is often the case. And one thing that not every religion loads you up with, but certainly many do, is racism.
Indeed.
Now, we have a person here today that has a very interesting life experience with racism and a life experience unwinding that. So we've brought in a big gun today. We've brought in Tony McAleer of the amazing organization Life After Hate to talk to us about all the joys and wonders of racism. Tony, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story, which I think is not the most common story, but it certainly is one of the more extreme ones.
Sure. And, to do that, I really have to go back to my childhood. And I want your listeners to think back to who they were at the age of 4, that when we come into this world. And I know little Tony was this bright, curious, sensitive, mischievous, stubborn, defiant little guy that was curious and open to the world. And, it's not, we find out it's not safe to be like that in the world. And we learn to shut down, put on masks and shields and emotional armor and such, and
protect yourself.
Right. And but when we do that, we become not who we truly are. And, I had a pretty normal childhood. My father was a psychiatrist. I suppose I could blame everything on that, but I grew up in an affluent neighborhood. I was born in England, came to Canada when I was 2, and went to private schools and that kind of thing. So I didn't come from the stereotypical broken, poverty-stricken family into the white power movement. I think the thing started to change for me when I was 10, and I walked in on my dad with another woman.
Oh, wow.
And that just rocked my world. And that was the moment when the God fell off the pedestal.
Right.
Do you guys remember that moment?
Oh, yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Well, everybody has that moment. They're not gods, they're human. And I felt betrayed by the authority figures in my life. And I was really angry. And I went from A's and B's to C's and D's. And going to an all-boys Catholic school.
Wow.
And the next year, I was down in the C's and D's, and they tried to motivate me to study, and I was tuning out. Again, I was rebelling against the authority figures there, and they got together with my parents, and I think it was my dad's idea. They said, "Well, why not just beat him?"
Jesus.
And if I didn't get an A or B on major tests and assignments, I got hit on the rear end with a yardstick.
Right.
And so I remember,
It's a great motivator.
Yeah. For some maybe, but it wasn't for me. And
There's nothing better for children than trauma, right? There's just nothing better.
It's the best way to go.
Scare the fuck out of them because you're twice as big and control everything in their lives.
Right.
yeah, so I remember, the teacher would hand out the test, and I'd pull up the corner like I'm playing Texas Hold'em, and 67. I know what that meant. And I'd have to go wait outside his little office, and whether it was 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I always wanted 1 minute more. You ever been in a situation where something bad's about to happen, there's nothing you can do about it? So he comes, opens up the door. I have to go into his office and put my hand on his desk and stare at his nameplate. And, he grabs the yardstick and how about this one? This is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. I don't know who that's supposed to comfort, but that wasn't me.
Right. Yeah, that's always one of those affirmations where it's like, what I'm about to say will neither do you any good, nor will it be true.
It's one of those moments where both parties know it's a lie.
It just seems to be a superfluous part of the ritual.
Yes.
Right.
And so the first time it was 2, then 4, then 6, then 8 times. And it was never more than 8, but it happened over and over and over again. I'm 11. I'm in grade 6, and
Right.
to this day, I don't think I've ever felt more powerless than I did in that office.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And it didn't work. I continued to rebel. By the time I got through to grade 9, the school kind of gave up. They brought my parents in and they said, look, there's not any one thing he's done worthy of expulsion, but his general level of defiance and being a pain in the ass, just take him somewhere else at the end of the year and we won't expel him. And I ended up wanting to get in touch with my English roots. So I went to boarding school in England.
Oh.
And here's the crazy thing. I got to choose the boarding school, right? So I chose the co-ed boarding school at a seaside resort, Scarborough.
Nice. Nice.
Being a Catholic kid with an Irish surname, going to a Methodist school full of British Army kids. That wasn't the recipe for.
It was a bad choice. You're saying,
Boy.
You chose poorly.
Yeah, the unintended consequences, right?
Right.
But on the weekends, I would go stay at my grandfather's in St. Helens, and when I was there, I got in touch with the skinhead scene. I'd gone from listening to Elton John and Queen, and would now listen to the Clash and the Sex Pistols, music that reflected my anger.
An angrier vibe.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's we listen to what resonates with us, and that was that music, and my dad is. They say there's nothing more English than an Englishman abroad. So he rebuilt the English pub in his basement with a copper top bar and barrels and pub mirrors, and didn't like the beer, so he brewed his own. And so he'd have all his English doctor colleagues. They'd all come over, for Sunday. They called it the session, and they'd be there Friday and Saturday night too. And it was, and so my dad was sort of uber British. And what I liked about the skinhead scene, which wasn't racist per se, it had a racist element to it, but the majority of it wasn't, especially at that time, was it was very pro-British, and they were into ale and into English soccer. And so I kind of went down that road, kind of false bonding with my father. I did not aware that I was doing it, but and my dad came from the Catholic slums of Liverpool, where there was 5 to a bed and things like that. And so he always said, working class values, middle class income kind of thing. So this working class youth movement I got drawn towards. And when I came back to Vancouver, I remember the first punk show I went to was Black Flag with Henry Rollins. And I'm standing outside with my Doc Martens on, and they were expensive and rare at that time. And these 2 skinheads, there wasn't very many in Vancouver at the time, come walking down the line, and they stop and stare at my Doc Martens, and they go, "What size feet you have?" And
shit!
I know why they're asking, right? And I'm quaking in my boots, and I lied. I said 7.5, and they looked at each other and said, "Nah, they wouldn't fit you anyways," and walked away.
Oh God!
So those 2 guys became my best friends.
Yeah, that's a great friendship bonding moment right there.
Yeah, and my bullying survival strategy, because I wasn't a tough kid and didn't get in many fights at school, was befriend the bully, become the bully, and
Right.
and I felt safe when I was with those guys, right? And nobody
Sure.
could physically dominate me like that. I didn't really realize it at the time, but like I felt so unsafe in that and powerless in that office. And for me to have their protection, I had to have their respect. And for me to have their respect, I had to commit all the same street violence that they did. And it was it was awkward at first. Like you have to think what I'm going to do with my fist or my feet, next. These guys, it was instinctual.
Right.
But I eventually became competent, and I liked it. Like the exhilaration, the buzz, and the feeling of power over someone was exhilarating. I wasn't all that great one-on-one, but if there was a couple of us, it was exciting. And the feeling of notoriety that we got and people being afraid of us was intoxicating as well. And at the beginning, I think we latched onto the white power part of it as just being the most hardcore version of skinhead. It was more part of the identity than it was really ideologically driven. But once I sort of was in that identity, I started to, I read Mein Kampf. I started to read books on the Third Reich and National Socialist economic policy. I kind of nerded out on National Socialism, and
you suddenly became a good
I
student.
suddenly became a very, very good student, and what people wanted.
You just had to find the right interest. That's all.
Yeah. And, my dad was bombed by the Germans during World War II. So it's an interesting way to be angry at your father when you have a poster of the guy who sent the bombs on your bedroom wall.
Right.
And how was he reacting to that at the time? I mean, he must have been aware that you were moving in that direction.
And he hated it, and to be honest, our relationship never, ever recovered fully from that. But, and I went down that whole rabbit hole. And by the time I was 19, 20, I was down at Aryan Nations in Idaho, and really pushing things to their extremes, and ended up being on the Montel Williams show twice.
Wow,
once as a skinhead in '89, and in '91 I was on with a suit and tie, as we attempted to mainstream to sort of present ourselves like what Richard Spencer does. Right, he puts on a suit and tie, looks sharp, and people listen to you better than when you're wearing combat boots and a flight jacket.
So Tony, you went from a powerless kid at Catholic school to eventually a street thug to a spokesman.
Right, and I set up a computerized voice messaging center. Press 1 for this, press 2 for that had messages from Tom Metzger and the National Alliance and Ernst Zundel and all these people, and then groups from Australia and stuff like that, and ended up going to the Supreme Court of Canada twice for violations of the Human Rights Act.
Wow.
So you were a bad dude.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was a bad dude. And I just want to point out here, I don't blame anything on my childhood. But I share what happened in my childhood to help understand the lens through which I made the decisions I made. I chose to do everything I did. And I hold myself accountable for that. And the analogy I like to use is, you ever gone to the grocery store when you're really hungry?
Right.
And you make different choices, right?
Right, sure.
More from the center aisles and less from the outside.
Exactly.
And so the analogy is, I went out into the world emotionally hungry. And my dad worked 70, 80 hours a week, so it was almost like being abandoned, but by the parent sleeps under the same roof. In the same way. And so as human beings, we just want to be loved. And if we can't find that in a healthy way, we'll find it, wherever we can get it. And for me, it was, that's attention, acceptance, approval, and
protection and safety.
Protection, yeah. All those things made, my mom said, well, why do you hang out with those guys? You could, you're smart, you're bright, you can hang out with all these other people and be successful. Why do you hang out with them? And, it wasn't until much later on where I thought to myself, they had what I didn't. And that was toughness. That was something that I valued more than intelligence, was toughness. And I gravitated towards that. And, you brought up trauma a minute ago. And I think through my own personal development, this is my view, that toxic shame is at a root. It's the root of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And toxic shame is like an impaired sense of self, right? And so when things happen to us, like trauma and other things that are not obviously traumatic that can happen, can do this, and we feel less than, we feel weak, powerless, unlovable, not smart enough, not pretty enough, whatever. It's very down in the basement of our subconscious identity belief system, and we live our lives in reaction to that. So
that's really interesting. Do you feel like the shame, because it occurs to me that the shame might lead to a spiral that puts you in the position of going back to, like, so the shame brought you into this group of people, and then something in you must have known that all of this violence, all of this hatred was on some level, in some sort of way, wrong or bad or deleterious to your humanity or something, which then might feed the shame cycle even further. Like, somehow to be ashamed of that. Yeah. Does that seem fair?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And So, to help distinguish, guilt is I did. Shame, toxic shame is I am. Healthy shame is I was.
Mm.
And that's
interesting.
And the I am is at that deep level. And the more I did stuff, it felt wrong at the beginning, but then I just learned to shut that stuff down. And you probably, if you encountered me sort of at the height of all of that stuff, I probably would have presented as a sociopath, and I was completely disconnected from my heart and operating solely from ego, and the ego should never be driving the bus.
So in that moment, at that time when you were at the height of your involvement in the organization and the thrall of all that much hate, did you have moments where you'd look in the mirror or you'd be falling asleep at night where you would be confronted by what you had become, or was there still a voice somewhere down in there?
I was drunk on power. I was a narcissist and an attention whore, and I was getting so much out of it that the thought of giving it up was, I didn't think about other people. Once you become disconnected from your heart, you only think about yourself.
Talk briefly about the things that you were getting out of this lifestyle, the things that were feeding you, the things that felt good about the lifestyle that you were living.
And it's like eating McDonald's at 2 a.m. It seems like a great idea at the time, and then it's empty, right? It feels good going down, and then you need more. And it was always the pursuit of more. And I got to a point where I was starting to feel empty and lonely. But that was
right, because at some point you need more and more to fill the hole, and then you just can't, there's not enough, right?
But in the end, it was an external catalyst that really challenged where I was, what I was doing, and who I was.
Talk about that a little bit. Tell us what that was and how it affected you.
Oh, it was the birth of my daughter and my son 15 months later. And the wonderful thing about children is they're safe to love, right? And they're and
they don't challenge you that way in a different way.
Yeah. It became and it's infectious. It's hard not to love a child, right? It started that thawing process in my heart because it was safe to open up. It's they're not capable of shaming, they're not capable of ridicule, they're not capable of rejection, at least not until about 13. So it became this safe place. It wasn't a come to Jesus moment that changed things for me. It was a process. It took several years, but it started with them entering my lives and them being the catalyst. And when they were 2 and 4, I ended up was separated with the mother. I was breaking up with her 3 months into the relationship, and she told me she was pregnant, and so we weren't off to a good start, and neither of us were capable of a healthy relationship at that time. I think your relationships with others is only as good as the relationship you have with yourself. And I was completely disconnected from myself. I was as far away out of alignment with who little Tony was that that was impossible.
So was she in the movement as well? Yeah. Your wife or girlfriend at the time? She was obviously fully invested as well.
Yeah, but then once we separated, she was out of it, and that's a pattern that shows up with women who leave the movement. It's you're not just dealing with the ideology and everything, but there's usually a relationship to navigate that either accelerates the process or is a hindrance. But once the relationship was over, she was out.
Right. And there must have been a moment then when you kind of were thawing in your feelings, and your children being the catalyst for that. Was there a moment when you realized this?
Yeah, again, it's part of a process. But when they were 4 and 6, and let's see, they were born in 91 and 92, 15 months apart. So By 95, I'd sort of been in 10 or 12 years. I was exhausted from all the court stuff, but I became a full-time single father.
Mm. Wow.
And I became aware that, at the age of 20, I thought I would be dead or in jail by the age of 30 as a white revolutionary.
Right.
And I was okay with that. But was it fair to me to have to maintain that same position and do the same activity with the children? Was it fair to them? And for the first time since I couldn't remember when, I started to make decisions with other people in mind. Before, I was a complete narcissist, and I began to realize that, I was almost unemployable because I was so high profile. Nobody would want to hire me. So I was affecting their quality of life because of limited income opportunities. My mom had to take them to preschool so that the other kids' parents wouldn't know that they were my kids.
Right.
Wow.
And take their kids out of school.
Yeah. And when they were born, they sort of gave me a choice and a challenge. And, it's almost like from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, when, who we become when we accept or face that challenge sort of defines us. And I chose to put them first, and that was the rationalization that I used, because, the first step of leaving these movements is disengagement. And that's where you leave the social group behind, you leave the activity behind, but you probably still have the beliefs. And that was me. And what I said to myself, why should I be like Don Quixote jousting windmills? Why should I do all of this stuff that I've done fighting for a bunch of white people who probably couldn't give a damn whether I lived or died? If I really want to make a contribution to the white race, I'll make sure these two children thrive and survive. And so that was because the challenge when dealing with anybody enmeshed in this ideology is ideology and identity are intertwined. They become intertwined, and you can't attack the ideology without attacking the identity.
Yep.
We find that a lot when you talk to a religious believer or whatever. You're not just talking about their beliefs; you're talking to them about who they are or how they perceive themselves as a person. So it can be It's a
very delicate conversation. Yeah,
it makes sense that this wasn't just a set of beliefs for you. It was who you were.
Absolutely, I had invested huge amount into that, who I was, and I wasn't about to give that up. And so I had to pivot ideologically and make it about my children and what's best for them. And that meant leaving the movement and the dysfunction and the garbage behind and just work on those two. That was how I did the ego is capable of incredible gymnastics in order to rationalize.
That's
Absolutely.
how you justified it to your white power self, was I'm going to preserve the white race by making these two white kids capable of carrying on whatever.
So once you disassociated yourself from the movement, was there a moment where you disassociated yourself or began to from the hatred and the racism?
And so when we separate ourselves from the movement, that process starts to happen to some extent naturally. American History X, when it came out in 1998, just had the 20th anniversary of that film.
Right.
Recently. Have you guys seen it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So there's, I'd already decided I'm on my way out, but the scene where he's in prison and he's getting stitched up after getting raped, and the history teacher comes in, asks him the question, Derek, has anything you've done made your life better? And I remember watching that, and he breaks down crying. And the first time I watched that film, I broke down crying because I asked myself the exact same question. And, what did I have to show for it? Nothing.
Right.
Well, you got those Montel appearances, so there's that.
So now, you made it out and you had this amazing kind of road to Damascus, slow motion road to Damascus moment. So can you talk a little bit about what you do now, what your organization is, and the advocacy?
Sure. And Life After Hate, we helped get people out of hate groups. And we were formed in 2011 after meeting at the Summit Against Violent Extremism. Life After Hate was an online journal before that. But the six of us came together in Dublin. Google Ideas put on this amazing conference where they brought together 50 former violent extremists from around the world, 30 victims and survivors. So you had the IRA and the Ulster Volunteer Force, all ex, of course, otherwise it would kind of be chaotic. But
right.
former FARC commander, the former president of Colombia, you name it. It transcended gender, race, class, ideology, faith.
Yeah.
And what inspired us so much is as we started to talk to people and listen to their stories, there were so many similarities.
Right.
And it was a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, a sense of brotherhood and camaraderie, and that's why people join. It's actually not the ideology. The ideology is a part of it, but the vulnerabilities, and I think it's the toxic shame creates those vulnerabilities.
Sure.
Where those things are missing, so we have to find it externally, and people coming out, the stories were similar too. I can't tell you how many times I heard, "Oh, it was the birth of a child," and it seemed anecdotally to be a female child more than
interesting.
the male child. Yeah, I think there's something about the feminine energy, and we want to protect our daughters, but turn our sons into warriors, right?
Right.
Or the other one that was really big was the receiving compassion from someone who we didn't feel we deserved it from.
Oh, interesting.
Give us an example of that. Yeah.
Well, there's the guy who started Life After Hate as an online journal, Arno. I remember he told the story of when he was at McDonald's, and there's an elderly African-American woman on the other side of the cashier, and she sees a swastika tattoo on his hand, and then she looks at him and says, "Come on now, son, you know you're better than that."
Wow.
And that was like, it was...
It's a brave woman.
Yeah, and it was like a virus inside his mind. Like it probably took a year or two but it started to, like, why would she say that? She has every reason to hate me. And when, I look at those compassion stories, and again, I'll tell you about mine in a sec. When we're compassionate with someone, we hold the mirror up to them and allow them to see their humanity reflected back at them when they can't see their humanity on their own. Mm-hmm. And when we're in a place like that, when I was in a place like that, I was completely disconnected from my own humanity. And, and the ego contorts itself and puts on masks. And, I was kind of like a pufferfish, right? Trying to make myself bigger and tougher than I actually was. And I believe that the level to which we dehumanize other human beings is a mirror reflection of how disconnected and dehumanized we are inside.
Absolutely.
And
so tell us about your moment of compassion. What happened
so
there?
After about, 98, 96, 97, I kind of left. And in 2004, I reinvented myself as a financial advisor. And I was getting off to some great early success. Life insurance is a lot easier to sell than Adolf Hitler.
And it's not that easy to sell.
I cut my sales teeth on the toughest thing out there.
Oh, that's awesome.
I've long lost my fear of rejection and people saying no.
Right.
And so I was doing really well, and I started to get into some personal development stuff. And I met I was introduced to this guy. He's about 10 years older. He's from Manchester. I'm from Liverpool. And, we hit it off like a house on fire. And a lot of it's it was like the intersection of quantum physics, metaphysics, and psychology. So it was getting out of your own way and limiting beliefs. And so I started to do these things and change things in my life. And my life very rapidly started getting better. So I ended up doing most of this guy's programs. And about 8 months later, the guy who introduced me, it was my birthday, hands me an envelope, open it up, and it's a gift certificate for one-on-one counseling with the guy. And I thought, great, who doesn't want therapy for their birthday, right? And so I go in and see the guy, and we're good friends. We respect each other. And I'm telling him about my childhood and why I'm angry at my dad and, all of this different stuff. And I'm sitting there going, do I tell him the rest? Because in my experience, when people found out about the rest, it was the end of the relationship.
That's that. Yeah,
in fact, and sometimes it was the end of an entire social circle.
Right.
Like in a heartbeat, it just ends.
Right.
And that's the price I had to pay for being an asshole, right? I mean, I didn't look at myself as a victim with that. It was just the price I had to pay. So he's looking at me and he's going like, come on, mate, just let it out. You look like you're trying to swallow 3 golf balls. And reluctantly, I started to tell him about being a skinhead and being a neo-Nazi and the violence and Aryan nations and all of that stuff. And the more I tell him, the more he leans in and the more he's smiling. And I'm like, I'm getting annoyed. It's my first therapy session and you're laughing at me and I'm being vulnerable. And I go, what's so funny? And he leans in with a big grin on his face and he goes, I'm Jewish, right?
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And he's the man I respected. We're friends, and he wants to heal me. He wants the best for me. He's loves me as a human being, and here I am, shrinking with shame into my chair, knowing that I'd once advocated for the annihilation of him and his people.
Right.
And that became really the beginning of a coaching, mentoring, counseling relationship that goes to this day. And the important thing about compassion is it has to be accompanied by healthy boundaries and consequences.
Sure.
And that's when it really makes it work. And he did that to me. He said, you're going to go on stage and tell your story. And I'm like, oh, hell no. I'm just beginning this lucrative financial services career, and
right.
that would be disastrous if I did that right now. But he kept kicking me in the butt and pushing me on. And in 2011, I got involved with Life After Hate, and in 2012, I went public as sharing my history and the lessons that I've learned. But in the space between 2005 and 2012. We did both individually and in a group setting, did a ton of work that was healing, stepping out of understanding the conditioning that I was running. And once you heal the wounds, or you can see where the conditioning starts from, you become conscious of it and it can go away, right? But you have to sort of take that deep internal look into the basement of your subconscious and look at things that are uncomfortable to look at. But he was brilliant in taking me there, and it's funny with some of the work that I did with him. In the matter of weeks or months, the relationship with my children changed how they dealt with me, because if we change who we are in the world changes how it relates to us, and it was always positive improvements, like layers of an onion. Every layer you peel, your life gets better. You just keep peeling, right? Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's something that we don't want to do, but stepping outside of the comfort zone and accepting who we are. And what I've learned is, the more I live my life in alignment with who little Tony is, the better it is. The more I live my life out of alignment with who little Tony is, the worse it gets. And so that's sort of been my...
So have you faced... You mentioned you were afraid to come out as a former skinhead because of the backlash you'd face in your new career. Have you faced any backlash because of that? And also, have you faced any backlash from the movement you left?
Surprisingly, not that much. I think, I had a number of Jewish clients, and I think I think there was only one of them that left, and I told them all ahead of time, except for that one, because I didn't know how to tell them, and I was afraid to tell them. They were my biggest client, and I think because they found out about it on TV instead of from me, I think that and that was a lesson to me, is be vulnerable.
Yeah.
I think everybody loves a redemption story. I think that's for people to know that's possible, that you can come from the depths of a place you were in to now you're working the other side of the street and trying to help other people escape from that. I think that's, I wouldn't flee you as a client, Tony. I would actually find that impressive.
I just don't have any money for you to manage.
That's why we asked you on. Do you have any money, Tony?
Yes.
Okay, well, Tony, given your experience and what you've been through and what you're trying to help other people to do, when you see things that happen in this country right now, kind of this upsurge in white supremacy and hate, like what happened in Charlottesville, or that very famous photograph of the entire senior class at that high school giving the Nazi salute, what do you see And what do you think when you see those photographs? And what do you recommend for people like us and our listeners when confronted with that kind of hate and that kind of sentiment?
I think what we have to understand is societies are very complex ecosystems, and actions and activity that seem to be on the fringe, like the things you were just talking about, Charlottesville and that classroom, Seek Hiling, and the class picture, are informed by mainstream acts of intolerance, right? So what happens in the middle changes where the end is, and what happens at the end changes where the middle is. And I think it starts with little acts of intolerance, which give permission to a little bit more acts of intolerance, and it ripples all the way down to the end where extreme acts of intolerance become more and more mainstream. So it's a whole of society problem, and it's a whole of society solution. And I think so for people want to understand what they can do, I think we need to be courageous and more active as bystanders, to say, hey, that joke's not cool. Because
right.
It starts with jokes, and as it ripples through society, well, if that's okay, you end up with more extreme things at the end. And I think it's not helpful to think that a piece of legislation or a different president is going to make it all go away. It's not. And so we have to think of who we are going to be in every moment of every day. Right. And there's two places that we operate from as human beings: fear and love. And I think we need to ask ourselves, which one am I going to operate from? And, I think there's division and dehumanization happening on both sides of the political spectrum for different reasons and different targets. But, I don't think that hating everyone that voted a certain way is helpful to the situation either. It helps justify the division that exists. And I think, I spent 15 years trying to change the world outside of me to make myself feel better. And what I've learned is the only way, the way that I can have the most influence in changing the world is changing who I am inside.
Right.
And that's sort of along the be the change you wish to seek. And I think people need to look into their hearts and try and eliminate that judgment, that dehumanization of the other wherever it happens. I think it's down in Orange County. There's a mayor down there that has started, I think it's called a Million Acts of Kindness or something like that, as a program. And it's dropped bullying by 50%.
Really?
In the schools. And if we operate from a place of love and kindness with each other, because I think in general we don't treat each other well.
Right.
And the society is reflecting that. And I think we need to, give an act of kindness or compassion to someone who we feel doesn't deserve it, and pay attention to how that makes you feel, and pay attention to how it makes the other person feel. There's, when I look at politicians today, and there's a very famous politician, I won't mention his name, but, when, he had a brother die of a drug overdose, and he doesn't drink himself. What that tells me is that there's an alcoholic parent. And there's the need to win all the time, the need to sort of dominate and win every transaction like it's a zero-sum game.
Right.
That tells me that person doesn't feel like they're a winner. They're constantly having to prove it to the world.
Right.
And from that point, I go, well, there must be an alcoholic, abusive parent there. And so when you look into people when they're behaving a certain way, are really just, they're projecting their wounds so many of the times. It's like the toxic shame thing. And
Sure.
And, when you understand someone's wounds, you understand them better as a human being. You don't just judge them for the label. And I think behind all of this stuff is there is room for compassion. Now, compassion again with healthy boundaries and consequences. Our executive director, Sammy Rangel's got a great line, and he's a social worker: never condemn, never concede. So when we help people, we listen to them. We don't condemn them, but listening to them doesn't mean you accept their values either.
Right.
And we never concede on our values. We never concede on our values. And, sometimes people just need to be listened to. And I don't think we do enough listening in our society. Everybody wants to talk.
That never condemn part is going to be tricky for, the internet. But I do feel like that's a useful way of looking at things, and maybe that's a beautiful sentiment on which to leave this discussion. Is just that if we can come from that place of love, if we can find a way not to condemn each other, it does seem like that's the path to healing for the whole world. I mean, right now our country, you're up in the Great White North there, but in our country, there's a lot of ugliness happening, and
yeah, I don't know if you've noticed that, Tony, but yes,
you probably haven't heard about it.
So anyway, well, listen, Tony, you're a prince. Thanks for sharing your story. If people want to find you and help support and become aware of the work you do, where will they look?
Lifeafterhate.org is where you can find the organization. My email address is tony@lifeafterhate.org, and on Twitter it's @McAleer.
Very good.
Great. Thank you so much, Tony.
Tony, thank you so much.
We really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on.
Well, friends, that's it for this week's show.
Hey, we'd love to hear from you guys. Send us an email, howto@howtoheretic.com.
Or if you're sell either life insurance or Adolf Hitler, you can leave us a voicemail at 903-88-HOW-TO, which is 903-884-6986. We're also on Twitter @HowToHeretic, and of course on Facebook, Once in a Blue Moon.
Yeah, and if you're selling Hitler, please actually don't contact us. Anyway, thanks so much to all of our patrons.
And thanks to Cody Layton for editing the show, if he's still alive out there somewhere.
And thank you, dear friends, for tuning in.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.